Hello, dear friends. Welcome to our channel Learn with Asif, where we bring you daily business updates and loads of information, whether it's motivational stories, inspiration, or related to the share market. So yes, keep watching our channel and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
Okay, so you want to talk about a company with a story. Get ready, because today we're diving deep into India's Tata Group. And we're not just talking about a business here, oh no, we're talking about a family legacy. A legacy that stretches back 200 years and is woven into the very fabric of India itself.
It's true, their journey is really something else. From a tiny village to a global powerhouse, the Tatas, they've been there every step of the way, witnessing India's evolution firsthand.
Because when I say powerhouse, I mean it. Tata, they're involved in everything these days. Cars, airlines, hotels. Heck, they even produce the salt you might be sprinkling on your dinner tonight.
Over 100 companies, that's right. But to understand it all, we need to rewind, all the way back to 1822. That's where we meet a young man by the name of Nusrawanji Tata.
Nusrawanji Tata. All right, set the stage for us. Who is this guy?
Picture this. A young man, just 20 years old, living in a small village in Gujarat, already married, already a father, and he gets this idea, this feeling that he's destined for bigger things. So what does he do? He packs up his family and heads for the bustling, vibrant city of Mumbai. Now that took some serious guts, especially back then.
Talk about a go-getter. It wasn't like today where you can just hop on a plane. What was it about Mumbai that drew him in?
Mumbai, it was the epicenter of the cotton trade. And Nusrawanji, he had a knack for spotting opportunity. He saw the potential and he went for it, building the very foundation of the family fortune we know today. But here's the thing, and this is important. His ambition, it wasn't just about money. He was incredibly focused on giving his son, Jamsetji, the best possible education. It was like this core value for him.
Interesting. So it's not just business as usual from day one.
Yeah.
There's this emphasis on knowledge, on personal growth baked right in.
Yeah.
What was it like for Jamsetji growing up with that kind of legacy, that weight of expectation on his shoulders? Did he follow in his father's footsteps?
He did, but in a way, even his father couldn't have predicted. In 1859, at the tender age of 20, Jamsetji was sent to Hong Kong, his mission, to expand the family business. Can you imagine that? The trust, the responsibility placed on someone so young.
Wow, talk about pressure. And this is 1859. We're talking months at sea, not a quick flight. That just shows the level of expectation they had for him. He must have been something special, even back then.
He really was. Driven, ambitious. He set up cotton mills all over India. But his vision, it went far beyond textiles. He dreamt of things that most people hadn't even conceived of at the time. India's first steel factory, a grand hotel that could rival the best in Europe, even harnessing the power of hydroelectric energy. These weren't just business ventures for him. They were about elevating India on the world stage.
There's this undeniable sense of national pride interwoven with his ambition. It's almost like he saw these projects as stepping stones, as building blocks for a stronger, more modern India.
Exactly. And that leads us to what we might call the Tata way, this unique approach to business that really set them apart. They understood even then that a company's success, it's not just about profits.
Right. Every company likes to talk about values these days, but the Tatas, they seem to actually live by them, even back then. So what were these principles that made them so different? How did the Tata way actually play out in their day-to-day business?
Well, perhaps the best way to illustrate this is with a story. It all starts at his first cotton mill, the one in Nagpur. Jamsetji noticed something. His workers, they were frequently absent, and as you can imagine, productivity was taking a hit. Now, the typical mill owner in the 1870s, their response probably wouldn't have been too sympathetic, let's just say that.
Yeah, I imagine it would have involved harsher rules, maybe even punishment.
Exactly. But Jamsetji, he was different. He was curious, you see. He wanted to understand why. Why weren't people showing up? What were the underlying reasons? He knew there had to be something more to it than met the eye. So instead of resorting to intimidation or threats, he did something radical. He introduced, of all things, employee benefits.
Employee benefits in the 1870s. Now, that's something you don't hear every day. What did that even look like back then?
Well, he established pensions for his workers, for one. Then he introduced accident insurance. Can you believe that? And he even created special family days just to foster a sense of community. These were absolutely unheard of back in the late 19th century.
Wow, it's amazing to think that benefits we consider commonplace now, even basic, were revolutionary back then. He was so ahead of his time.
He really was. And this wasn't just a one-off publicity stunt either. These principles, The fair treatment, the focus on worker welfare, giving back to the community, they became deeply ingrained in the company's DNA, influencing generations of Tata leaders to come.
It really does make you think, doesn't it? How differently would the business world look today if more leaders had adopted that kind of compassionate, human-centric approach?
Yeah.
It's clear that Jamsetji, he wasn't just a smart businessman, he was a true visionary, a leader with this incredible sense of social responsibility. But I'm guessing his journey wasn't without its bumps in the road, right?
Oh, absolutely not. And one event in particular, it really tested his commitment to those principles. That event, the American Civil War, it really did. It's easy to forget how interconnected the world was even back then. The American Civil War, it sent shockwaves across the globe, and India was no exception. You see, England, they usually got their cotton from the U.S., but the war, it brought everything to a grinding halt.
And I'm betting a young, ambitious Jamsetji saw that as his chance to make a real impact.
He did. He absolutely did. Recognized the opportunity right away. England was desperate for cotton, and there he was, perfectly positioned to supply it. Of course, he had to charge a premium. I mean, we're talking more than double the usual price, but England, they were in a bind. They needed that cotton.
Smart move. Supply and demand, right. But I have a feeling this isn't where the story ends.
You're one step ahead of me. See, when the Civil War ended, cotton prices, they plummeted, just crashed down. And Tata's business, well, it took a major hit. Imagine the pressure he must have been under. Investors breathing down his neck, demanding their money back.
Okay, yeah, now that's a test of character if I've ever heard one.
Yeah.
So what did he do? Did he fold under pressure?
Not a chance. He went to his investors, head held high, and you know what? With honesty, humility. He said, look, I understand your concerns, I do, but I need more time. Give me another chance, just another chance, and I will make you whole, I promise. And here's the real kicker. He volunteered to cut his own salary drastically. He basically worked for next to nothing, all to keep the company afloat until it recovered.
Wow, that's something else. To have that level of commitment, to put his own well-being on the line for his workers, for his investors, that's a rare breed of leader.
That's true leadership right there. It really is. It speaks volumes about his integrity, his belief in something larger than himself. And, this actually echoes his own father's actions. Remember when Nusarwanchi's business struggled? He sold his mansion to pay back investors. It's like this sense of responsibility, this commitment to something bigger than themselves. It was passed down, woven into their very being.
A powerful example of leading by example, that's for sure. Not just talking the talk, but walking the walk, even when the going gets tough. So we've got this incredible entrepreneur, a man with a social conscience, big dreams for India. But how did those dreams actually materialize?
Oh, sadly, Jamsetji didn't live to see all of his dreams realized, but what he did do was lay the groundwork, the foundation, for a legacy that would span generations. Take the steel plant, for example. It was actually his son, Dorabji, who saw that particular dream come to fruition.
Right, Dorabji Tata, another one of those names that's practically synonymous with Indian industry.
Absolutely. By 1910, under Dorabji's leadership, Tata Steel was up and running, producing steel right there in India for the very first time. But little did they know, history had other plans. World War I was about to erupt, and everything was about to change.
I can only imagine how much that must have disrupted everything. Didn't Tata Steel end up playing a vital role in the war effort?
Absolutely. Suddenly, the British Empire, they needed steel, and a lot of it, and fast. Tata, with its reputation for quality, reliability, they stepped up in a big way. We're talking tanks, weapons, railway lines, everything essential to the war effort. Tata was there.
I actually remember reading about this. Wasn't there a British politician who credited Tata Steel with helping them win the war? Something like, Tata Steel saved us.
It's true. There were even reports, about the exceptional quality of their steel. Apparently, enemy bombs, they had a harder time penetrating the armor plating used on those British tanks, all thanks to Tata Steel. That's quite a testament to their craftsmanship.
Talk about making a name for yourself on the world stage. So after the war, I imagine Tata Steel was in a prime position, ready to capitalize on their success. What happened next? Did they just keep riding that wave?
Well, they were on a high, that's for sure. Internationally recognized, riding high. But then came another twist, a big one. India's independence in 1947. And with independence came a wave of socialist policies under Jawaharlal Nehru. He believed very strongly in nationalizing major industries.
And for a company like Tata, they were practically the face of Indian industry at that point. I can't imagine that was an easy pill to swallow.
To say the least. Take Tata Airlines, for example. The precursor to Air India, as we know it today, it was nationalized. A real blow to J.R.D. Tata, who had poured his heart and soul into it.
J.R.D. Tata, of course.
Yeah.
Jamsetji's son and the man who led Tata for, what was it, over 5 decades? That's a whole story in itself. To have this company, this legacy you've helped build, essentially taken away from you, that's got to be a tough one to process.
Absolutely. It was a defining moment, that's for sure. For both JRD and the company itself, he was a trained pilot, you see, a true aviation enthusiast. So Tata Airlines, it wasn't just business for him, it was personal. It was a passion.
I can only imagine how heartbreaking that must have been for him. So what happened? What became of Air India? Did the government just push JRD aside?
Well, that's where it gets really interesting. See, despite his personal feelings, his disappointment, JRD understood the importance of a strong national airline. And get this, the Nehru government, they recognized his expertise too. They asked him to stay on to lead Air India as its chairman.
Wow, are you serious? He ended up leading the company, even after it's nationalized. Talk about putting your ego aside for the greater good. That's incredible.
It really is. It speaks volumes about his character, his dedication, his understanding of India's needs. And you know what? Under his guidance, Air India, it flourished. It became one of the most respected airlines in the world. Yeah. It's quite a turn of events, isn't it? I mean, from nationalization to global recognition, all under essentially the same leadership, even if the circumstances were, well, unusual to say the least. It really shows you, I think, JRD's dedication, his commitment to this vision of a modern India, a capable India, taking its place on the world stage.
No doubt about it. It's an incredible story. But Air India, that was just one piece of the puzzle. What else was happening with Tata during this time? I mean, were they able to grow, to diversify, even with these new economic realities to navigate?
Oh, you know the Tatas, always thinking a generation ahead, at least. While JRD was busy, steering Air India, he was also overseeing Tata's expansion into all sorts of new sectors. In fact, you might be surprised to learn that 1945 saw the very first Tata Motors vehicle.
Hold on, wait. Tata Motors. Back in 1945, what were they making back then? Model Ts?
Not quite. Their first venture into vehicles, it wasn't cars, no. It was locomotive engines. And then, a couple of decades later, in 1968, they went ahead and established Tata Consultancy Services. You probably know them as TCS.
TCS, right. Isn't that one of the biggest employers in India today?
Second only to the Indian Railways, in fact. But getting back to JRD for a moment, navigating those socialist policies, well, it wasn't always smooth sailing, let's just say that. In 1969, they passed a law designed to, well, prevent monopolies. Remember how we talked about JRD's father? How he consolidated ownership to safeguard those Tata companies? Yeah. Well, JRD, he had to do the opposite.
Really? Wow.
He had to strategically dilute Tata Sons' ownership in a lot of their companies just to comply with the law. It goes to show, I think, how each generation of leadership, they had to adapt, had to respond to the challenges of their time.
It's true, they did. And it makes you realize that there's no one-size-fits-all approach to leadership, is there? It's about reading the situation, understanding the landscape, and making the tough calls.
Exactly. And that brings us to our next Tata titan. This is where Ratan Tata enters the picture.
Ratan Tata. Now, there's a name that carries some weight, even on the global stage, I'd say. But it sounds like his path to the top wasn't exactly a walk in the park, was it? So what were those early days like for him? What kind of leader was he shaping up to be?
Well, think back to JRD having to reduce Tata Sons' ownership, right? What that meant was that some Tata companies, they weren't exactly firing on all cylinders. Less direct control, maybe a bit less accountability. It happens.
Yeah, makes sense. So where does Ratan fit into all of this? Was he thrown in at the deep end?
In a way, yeah, you could say that. He was given charge of a few of these struggling companies, see what he could do. One of them was Nelco, their electronics arm. By the early 70s, their market share, it was in free fall.
Okay, yeah, I see. Classic turnaround situation.
Right.
So what was Ratan's big move? How did he tackle it?
He made a pretty bold decision, especially for the time. He decided to stop manufacturing radios altogether.
Whoa, hold on. Scrap their core product. That's a gutsy call. What did he see that others were missing?
He recognized that the future, it wasn't in radios, it was in new technologies. So he invested in things like satellite communications. A bit ahead of the curve, you could say.
What a gamble. I mean, I guess that's what it takes sometimes, right? To be a real leader. You can't play it safe all the time. So did it pay off?
It did. Within just 3 years, Nelco, back on top, proving Ratan's instincts right. Now, unfortunately, some political factors, they ended up forcing them to close Nelco a bit later down the line. But the experience, the lessons learned, Invaluable for Rattan. Showed everyone that he was capable of making those tough calls, adapting to a changing landscape, not afraid to shake things up a bit.
A true trial by fire. And I bet the higher-ups at Tata, they took notice.
Oh, absolutely. By 1991, Ratan Tata, he became chairman, inherited the reins at, you could say, a pivotal moment. India was entering a new era, liberalization.
Right. The Berlin Wall was down, globalization was in full swing, and India opened up its economy to the world. I mean, that must have been a seismic shift for a company like Tata.
It was a whole new ballgame, and Ratan, he knew it. He recognized that to compete on this new global stage, well, Tata had to evolve. They had to be bolder, more strategic. And one of his first major moves, it was actually the complete opposite of what JRD had done. He started increasing Tata Sons' ownership in its subsidiaries.
Fascinating. So instead of diluting, he was consolidating. But why? What was the thinking there?
He saw that with liberalization, foreign companies, they were free to enter the Indian market. And he needed a way to protect those homegrown Tata companies, prevent them from being swallowed up by bigger fish, so to speak. It was about ensuring that these companies that were so deeply rooted in India, they stayed that way. They remained truly Indian.
What an interesting parallel. JRD navigating those socialist policies by, in a way, loosening control. And then you have Rattan facing globalization head-on, and his instinct is to tighten control. It just shows how each leader's decisions, they were shaped by the context of their time, by the challenges they faced, but always with that long-term vision in mind.
Exactly. But Rattan, he didn't stop there. He went on something of a global shopping spree, if you will. Iconic brands like Tetley Tea, they became part of the Tata family.
Tetley Tea, wow. From salt to software to tea, Tata was building an empire. But if you ask me, the acquisition that really made everyone sit up and take notice, it was Jaguar Land Rover.
That was a big one, wasn't it? This struggling British luxury car maker and the workers themselves, they were practically campaigning for Tata to buy them.
They were. What was it about Tata that inspired such confidence, though? I mean, that's pretty remarkable.
Tata had this reputation, you see. A reputation for investing in their acquisitions, for really understanding the value of a company's history, of its people. The workers at Jaguar Land Rover, they felt that Tata would respect their craft, their legacy. And you know what? They were right. Ratan Tata, he turned those brands around, kept those iconic British cars alive and well, and made them global successes in the process.
It's another example of that Tata approach, isn't it? The one we talked about earlier. The understanding that a company, it's more than just its assets, right? It's the people, the skills, the stories behind it all.
Exactly. And, for all of Rattan's global aspirations, he never lost sight of those core Tata principles, that drive to make a real difference in people's lives. And that, I think, brings us quite nicely to the Tata Nano.
Ah, yes. The world's cheapest car. I remember when that launched, it was such a statement. A car for the everyday person. That was the idea, right?
Precisely. Rattan's vision, it was to provide affordable, reliable transportation to millions of Indians, people who had probably never even dreamed of owning a car. It was as much a social experiment as it was a business venture, a bold one at that.
It really did capture the imagination, didn't it?
Yeah.
Sure, it had its critics. There were bumps in the road. But you have to admire the ambition, the sheer audacity of it.
I agree. And, when we step back and look at the legacy of Tata, it's pretty amazing what they've accomplished, and not just in the typical business sense, Institutions like the Indian Institute of Science, even the city of Jamshedpur itself, they owe their very existence to the Tata family.
It's true. They've poured resources into education, into community development, into building a stronger India. It's inspiring, really.
It is. Their story makes you think, doesn't it, about the role of business in society. It's not just about profits. It can be about so much more than that. It can be about purpose, about making a real and lasting difference.
It can be about leaving the world a better place than you found it. And on that note, I think we've reached the end of our deep dive. But this is just the beginning of the conversation, really. A huge thank you to our expert for taking us on this incredible journey, and to all of you for listening. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep the spirit of curiosity alive.